Which juicer is the best? It's a question we hear a lot. Hi, I'm Dan at EUJUICERS, and today we're going to try to answer that question. And I can tell you up front, the answer we give most people is there is no best juicer. It depends on what you are juicing, what your specific needs are. But there are different technologies, different types of juicing, and in this video we want to compare the four main technologies. We've got basically the best machines in each category, and I'm going to run them through their paces. Going to try four different types of produce, going to compare yield, clarity of juice, things like that. So generally speaking, there's two kinds of juicers: slow speed, which I have three here, and high speed, centrifugal. Let's look at this centrifugal first of all. These are the kind of juicers that you would see in a department store, an electro store, things like that. And you might see them by different brands like Breville and Solus and Bork and Cattler. There's lots of different versions of these guys. But they follow the same technology, a high speed, sometimes 5,000 or more RPM system, spinning really fast, forcing the juice out against a screen. You see here, this model here has a really nice mesh screen. Some of the cheaper ones, you'll see they look like a grater almost here. Steel with some bigger holes. This has a nice high mesh. Centrifugals get a bad rap sometimes as being, well, you know, these are inexpensive, so maybe they're cheap. It's not necessarily true. This is a high-end centrifugal, and it will do its job well. The advantages, generally speaking, of centrifugal, first of all, the price. They tend to be a lot less expensive than slow juicers. Also speed, they go fast. My first juicer was a centrifugal, and I could throw some carrots and apples, start it up, and in 20 seconds I've got a glass of juice there. On the other hand, they take a while to clean up. After a few weeks of using my first centrifugal juicer, it spent most of its time out in the garage because it was such a hassle to clean. They're also noisy. They don't work so well if you try things like spinach and leafy greens. Soft fruits get clogged up in there. But for things like oranges, apples, carrots, it did fine on those. On the other side, there's the slow juicers. These all use some sort of auger, some sort of like worm gear, turning slowly, anywhere from 40 to 80 RPM. And that's the one thing they have in common. Otherwise, there's differences. Take a look at this one here, a vertical juicer. You have an auger, but instead of horizontally like these guys, this auger is vertical. It has twin blades. It runs slowly, 40 RPM, but because of the twin blades, you're getting twice as much produce being pulled through, so it's kind of equal to 80 RPM. All of these guys running at a slow speed generally will give you a higher amount of nutrition. You don't have the oxidation, you don't have that just fast, violent cutting you have in other systems. Vertical overall, there's some pluses here. Just want to look real quickly. For the most part, it's self-feeding. Because it's being pulled down, you don't have to be pushing everything like you do over on this side. It's easy to clean. It has a simple juicing screen here. Fairly flexible. Almost a convenience, I would say, is maybe the biggest benefit here. On the other hand, it can struggle sometimes, these verticals, with certain things, with some fibrous things. Leafy greens, sometimes you want to get some hard root vegetable like a carrot or beet mixed in with your leafy greens to push them through. Sometimes things can get clogged a bit here. You might have to reverse the motor sometimes. But generally speaking, this is the easy machine to use. Moving on, here's a horizontal juicer, our best-selling type of juicer. This is a Sauna 707. Oh, by the way, this is an Omega 843. This is made by Omega, this 707. This is what I have at home. And this machine, I would say the biggest plus is flexibility. It does a lot of things, and it does them pretty well. I use mine almost every day, mostly to make juice. But one thing these guys can do that the others don't is make dry ingredients and like nut butters, things like sorbets, baby food. I make salsa in this in the summer. I make lots of cashew butter, some peanut butter. That's one big advantage. It's also very easy to clean. I can clean mine up in about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Most things are just rinse. There's a little screen here you have to scrub with a toothbrush type thing. So some of the disadvantages, it's not self-feeding. Like the centrifugal has that big tube, this vertical's pulling things in. This you've got to push through with a pusher. But it's no big deal. It doesn't bother me at all. But really, overall, a good all-around device. Moving on here, this is a twin gear. Same slow technology, but instead of one big auger pushing it through like we had here, that's just smashing your produce up against a screen, this is doing this nice step here. There's 2 gears that fit just perfectly. This is stainless steel, really high quality device here. And what it's going to do is turn and pull your produce in, which is great for things like leafy greens. I've got a colleague here who has one of these because he does a lot of greens, and it's great. It'll grab them, suck them in. But if you're doing something like carrots, it's a little more work. You've got to push to get those guys in there. Also, something like this, cleanup might be a little more difficult because you can't remove the screens like you can with these guys or with the centrifugal. The screen is really part of this big unit, so there's a little more cleanup involved. There is an optional add-on for the Angel that can do nut butters, and that's about it. Still maybe not as flexible as this, but it is said, the Angel, you'll get a really, really high quality juice. Now, this is a premium product. Omega recently introduced a twin gear juicer. Has a similar form factor like this 707, and you can look on our channel because I recently tested one. It was a nice machine. So that's a general overview. What I want to do next is start with, I'm not sure, maybe grapes, and I'm going to have a kilo of each or the same amount of each fruit or vegetable. Going to run them through each machine, see how much juice I get, and then weigh the pulp at the end. So I'm looking forward to see, do these stack up as we've conceived them to be? Who's going to make the most juice? How will it look? We'll look at the clarity. I'll try to see how it tastes, things like that. All right, so I'm looking forward to it. Let me set up with my first fruit. All right, I'm ready to start juicing. First up is a centrifugal juicer. What I have here is a kilo of grapes for each machine. So I just want to run these through quickly. One observation, that was very fast. Another observation, I'm glad I didn't wear a white shirt because I could feel some pulp flying back in my face there. All right, so how does it look? You can probably get a detail. It looks like about 600 milliliters of juice. It was very fast. Put it in the carafe, and then what I want to do after that is weigh the pulp, see how much we've got there. And next, I'll take this pulp out and weigh it, see how much pulp is left. So the pulp here on the centrifugal juicer for the grapes was 237 grams. And now next up will be the Omega 843 vertical with the grapes. All right, that's all my grapes, and it's just about done here. A little bit more is coming out. Tilt it forward, see if there's any more I can get. One nice thing, that was self-feeding. I didn't have to use a pusher at all. And a little more here. I've got about 700 milliliters of juice there. Now I'll put it into the carafe. And I've got some pulp here, so let me get the scale out. I can tell already it's a lot drier. We'll see how many grams this is. All right, that was 156 grams, and that does include taking the pulp out from the inside. We scooped it out, not just what came out here. So next up is the horizontal. Let's see how the horizontal did. About 800, I would say. So it keeps going up, these yields. Oh, that happens all the time, sorry. Now, let's see how much pulp we've got. The pulp from the horizontal weighs in at 115 grams. Looks good. Last but not least, the Angel Twin Gear. Let's see how it handles these grapes. That's about all the grapes. A few quick observations. This one takes the most effort. Not that it's difficult by any means, but it does have to be pushed consistently. It also looks like the color of the juice may be the best. It has a nice kind of mauve color there. And looking at the result here, an estimate, a little harder to see, maybe around 700 or 800. Again, there will be a more exact measurement later. Let's try not to spill. So the pulp from the Angel is 64, 65, so by far the lightest. So those are the grapes. Let me make some general observations here. I'm putting them all together so you can see them kind of up close. First of all, notice there's a big difference between the 3 slow juicers and this guy here. I initially said it was around 600 milliliters. I can see looking at it now, it's less than that because a lot of it's foam. Again, that's a result of the high speed. Otherwise, these guys look similar. The Angel's is a little more colorful. I don't know, maybe it got more of the skin in. Obviously, it got more of something because there was the least pulp. I'm keeping a handy chart, and at the end of the video, you'll see a summary. If you're into the raw data, this will show you how long did it take to do each one, how much pulp was left, how much juice did we get. But generally speaking, this was the fastest by far, about 38 seconds. This was the slowest, almost 4 minutes, 3:45. And then these guys were somewhere in between. This was also probably the hardest to clean, and I had a lot of splashback coming from it. This guy was really easy to clean. This was easy to clean, a little more time to get it done. But really, the biggest difference is between these fast juicing technology, slow juicing technology. And up next, how about pineapple? That might be a challenge for some of these. Curious to see how it works. There's 1 kilo of chopped pineapples ready to go for each machine. Now, pineapples can pose a bit of a challenge. My oldest daughter likes pineapples. She loves them. So I juice a lot of pineapple. Generally, I have to mix it with some carrot. Again, I have a 707 because pineapples have long fibers and they can get into these screens and meshes and clog things up. So I'm curious to see how it goes. Starting off with the centrifugal juicer. Again, like before, fast, a little messy, as to be expected. And looking here, as I learned before, it's hard to tell exactly because there's some foam in there that's going to separate. But with the foam, I'm at about 800 milliliters. And at the end, we'll see how much of that is foam and how much of that is juice. So let's pour it out, see how it looks. Real thick and foamy there. Now I'm going to scoop all the pulp out of here, see how much, see the weight of the pulp. I've got the pulp here, and a little surprise. This looks like a little alien. It came shooting out of the centrifugal. So if you're using one of these, you got to be fast, get out of the way. It's some little pineapple head. It's kind of cute, actually. And this pulp is really wet. It's almost like soup or something you could spread on a piece of bread, and it's 268. I'm curious how this is going to look by the time I'm done with all the machines, because it's so thick like a smoothie. There doesn't seem to be much of a difference between what's in the carafe and what's in the bowl. But we'll see after these are done how much juice is left when it separates. But right now, time for the vertical juicer. This is going really well, actually. I'm surprised. No backups, nothing. And it was completely self-feeding, which was really nice. Really an easy machine to use. And handy to have this juice flap to close here. What do we have? 700 milliliters. Milliliters. And notice immediately the huge difference from the smoothie I got before on the centrifugal to here. Yeah, there's foam, but not very much. Let's get into the carafe, see how it looks. What a difference. Also notice, I want to show something. This pulp is so much drier, whereas the one before, check this out. It looks like, it looks like it's mashed potatoes, wet mashed potatoes, like with extra milk. This is just a world of difference. So I'm curious, let's go see how much this one weighs. This pulp should be significantly lighter than the last, 180. Not quite as light as I thought, but again, the difference in the juice is obvious. I'm curious to see how the horizontal will do. Let's give it a shot. Like I mentioned before, with these horizontals, that fiber can get in there, and I don't know if you can see, the juice starts to back up a bit. A couple of ways you can deal with it. Like I said, I do at home, I just throw a carrot in. That will kind of clean it out. I've also actually stopped it, pulled the strainer out and rinsed it, but that's kind of a hassle. Another little trick, you can loosen this juicing cap, kind of give it some air there, and then tighten it back up. And that will pull some of the fibers out, get some of that extra juice out. It'll just speed things up a bit. But again, really for me, the easiest, just throw something hard in there, a hard Granny Smith apple or a carrot, something like that. Carrot won't add much flavor, and it will clear it out. That's the last bit of pineapple. And it's taken a while, as I expected. And there's still a fair amount of juice sitting in there. A couple of ways you can do that. Sometimes I'll let the thing off and kind of tilt it back here. Some of that juice will go in. But that's still a good yield. Looks like there is about 700 milliliters, maybe a little bit less. Let's see how it looks. I can see in here, compared to the vertical, there is more pulp. It's thicker, nowhere near the centrifugal. And speaking of pulp, time to weigh it, see how it looks. It should be similar to the other vertical. Yeah, 154. And now, let's try the Angel. This could be challenging. We'll see. The Angel Juicer's twin gears, the clearance is so tight, these big fibers in a pineapple can really pose a problem. There's a colleague here at EUJUICER that has one of these at home and says, man, you start juicing pineapple, you get about a third of the way through a pineapple, and it gets pretty difficult. So I'll see how that goes. So I'm not even a fourth of the way through, and you can see the foam. It's just, twin gear technology isn't really the best for these long fibers in a pineapple. Now there is a different kind of pusher. This has a silicone ring around it that forms a complete seal. In fact, it's slightly bigger, so you really have to push to get it through. I'm going to see if that helps a bit. At least it will keep that foam from pushing back up. Yeah, it seemed to get rid of some of the foam. I maybe take back what I said earlier. This other pusher with the silicone ring is making a big difference. What it's doing, it's keeping the foam from backing up through the inlet tube. And it's, as you can see, or as you will see when I pour the juice, it's all coming out here. But it's working, and I think I will be able to get through the entire pineapple now. So the pusher makes a big difference. It's just about done. I noticed if I use a twisting motion, that seemed to really help get the pineapple into those gears. But you can also see there's a lot of foam, but also a lot of juice. But exactly how much juice? Let's take a look. This one's a little harder to read, but I would say roughly, we'll measure it more accurately, maybe 700, 600 milliliters. It'll be a little tricky to pour in with this foam. There's still a little juice in there. All right, let me measure the pulp, get this all cleared out of here, get you an accurate weight reading. This pulp here is a lot finer than the others, and the scale shows it, 100 grams. So had the least amount of, or at least the lightest pulp in the whole group. Now comparing all of these, let me put them all up front here. I would say, in my opinion, the winner was the vertical. Why do I say that? Was because it was easy, and let's take a look. Okay, the Angel probably made the best juice. If you look at that, it's the deepest color versus these lighter ones. Obviously the centrifugal juicer, it made some sort of watery juice-like concoction and then a bunch of foam. The horizontal and the vertical were similar, but remember the horizontal was a lot of work to get done. It kept backing up. The vertical was just a joy to use. And then the Angel was a lot of work also, but with that special pusher with the silicone ring, it wasn't so bad. Yeah, there's a lot of foam, but the juice quality is really nice. So if you're willing to put in the time, I'd say this is probably the best juice, but overall I'd say this was the one to go with, the easiest. Next, I think carrots would be a good thing to try. All the machines should handle carrots pretty well, hopefully. We'll see. These carrots should be pretty simple for all these machines. We'll see. Carrots, like oranges, are pretty easy to juice. So starting with the centrifugal. Yeah, that went super fast. No problem here. How's it look? I don't want to spill my juice all over the table. I've got 600, I'd say. 600 milliliters. One thing to watch for will be the clarity of the juice to compare them. How clear, how thick does it look? And now I've got to scoop all the pulp out of here and weigh it. Now obviously carrots don't have the high juice content of a pineapple or certainly a grape, so I expect this pulp to weigh a lot more than the previous ones. And 357 grams. So that's going to be a lot, but we'll see how it compares to the other three. Right now I want to clean this machine up and then move on to the vertical. Now I've heard it said sometimes verticals can have a little challenge with carrots, so I'm going to take it slow, take it easy. was the last carrot. One nice thing, it was basically self-feeding. However, like I mentioned before, it had a little bit of trouble. It jammed up 2 or 3 times. Easy enough to take care of. I just go into reverse for half a second, back to forward, and it keeps going. But it's something to keep in mind. You just can't feed the carrots too quickly. How about the yield? About 450 milliliters. And like I said before, we will have exact measurements at the end of the video. We'll have a chart showing times, yields, pulp weight, things like that. And let me get this pulp all weighed up. So again, a lot of pulp, as would be expected, 484 grams. All right, next up is the horizontal. So that's a kilo of carrots. Now, generally speaking, a horizontal will make a clearer juice from a root vegetable than a vertical, certainly than a centrifugal. But I don't know if that will be visible. We'll see when I put it in the carafe. Looks like about 400 milliliters of juice from that kilo of carrots. And how does it look? Just want to take a look myself, side by side. You'd almost need a spectrometer to really see the difference. But to my eye, this does look a bit clearer. Really, the true test would be taste. But first, let's measure this pulp. Again, a big bowl of pulp, probably more than the others. Yeah, 533 grams. Which explains why there's a little less juice and why it's a little clearer. There's less pulp in there to fill up the volume. And last but not least, the twin gear. Be curious to see how that handles carrots, this different kind of technology. one's really a workout. I've noticed from my other angel videos, you gotta really work at it with carrots. But it looks like it did give a pretty nice yield and a lot less pulp than one would expect. Just guesstimating here, I'd say about 700, maybe even 800 milliliters of juice. Let's take a look at the clarity, the color. Look at that, definitely a lot more. Check it out compared to the horizontal. So the different technology definitely makes a difference. Now I'll weigh this pulp, and it should be a lot lighter than the others. Definitely notice a lot less pulp. This angel is far more efficient. 203, and that's compared to over 5 for this guy. So taking a look at these 4, how did they stack up? And I'll arrange them this way. I want to hold some of these up next to each other so you can see. Just looking at volume, I'd say the angel was the clear winner, especially when you consider how clear it is. Check this out. The centrifugal has similar volume, but it's a lot thicker. There's a lot more pulp in there. But there's also foam on the top. This foam's a lot clearer. These two guys were similar. I have my chart here. Again, we'll show this at the end of the video. Some interesting things, very fast as usual. The centrifugal did it in about 40 seconds. The vertical, not so good with carrots. Took over 4 minutes. This was almost 4 minutes. This was about 2.5. So who's the winner? I don't know. This may be the angel because it had the best juice yield and has a pretty nice looking juice. And definitely just remember with verticals and carrots, take it slow, you'll be okay. The other two, this one did fine, this one fast as usual. Finally, going to wrap it up with leafy greens. That should pose some challenges for some of these machines. Interested to see how that goes. And the last thing we're going to try here is leafy greens with all our machines. What I have here is a mix of spinach and then these little curled leaves. You might know them as corn salad or lamb's lettuce. They go by different names. And I'm going to do 1 kilo in each machine. This isn't 1 kilo. This is a lot less. But I have behind me a lot more, just boxes of this stuff. And that will give a better indication of the yield. Now, generally, centrifugals are not recommended for leafy greens, so we'll see. These guys should do a little better. I'll go ahead and start it up. That's a lot of leafy greens. That was a big box. Don't know if that showed up on camera, and most of it is back here in the pulp container. But that being said, it did extract juice out of there. And I'd say about 300 milliliters. Let me pour it out. See how that looks. It is a deep green. and also measure the pulp, there's going to be a lot of pulp, I can tell you that much. So I have a big bowl of chopped salad, basically, and a little bit of juice. 615 grams there. So hopefully these other three will do better. Let's see, that's a lot of salad. It's not exactly a fast process. If you're going to be juicing a lot of greens, make sure you have a lot of time. It's a little bit of work here. I feel myself aging as I do this. And finally, it's done. About 8 minutes worth of juicing. But notice the big difference. First of all, in the pulp, it's these little squares. Nothing like this bowl of mixed greens we had from the Centrifugal. But how much juice did that yield? Looks like, I'd say about 620. 620 milliliters, quite a bit more than the other one. And how does it look? Very thick, almost like a smoothie. Oh, and there was a chunk in there. I don't know what that was. That'll be a surprise later, I guess. Okay. Clearly this will be a lot lighter pulp. Should be. We'll know in a second. Definitely less here. The other was what, about 6.5? This is 453. So quite a bit less. Let's see how the horizontal works. I'm used to doing this one at home. Should be quick and easy. So I'm almost finished. It's the longest I've ever juiced greens. But that's because at home, I do juice greens. I juice a lot of spinach, but I mix it with carrots and apples and ginger and beets. So it goes a lot faster. I'm just doing a couple of handfuls to get that iron in there. But this went pretty well. And it looks like there was a nice yield, nice dry pulp. But exactly how much yield, that is the question. And the answer is about 600 milliliters, which I think is more than the vertical gave me. Let's see if I can pour it without spilling it everywhere, because this is not easy to clean up. Hey, I've got a leaf, a little boat in there. It's thick, and I think a lot of that comes from that lamb's lettuce. When I do spinach, it's not nearly so thick and dense. Now it's time to weigh the pulp. I see a trend forming here. As I go down the line, I have less pulp, or lighter pulp at least. It sure feels like it. Let's see. 3, 5, 8, 358, as opposed to the 450 something and what, around 6 over there. So each time as I go down the row, I'm getting a little more juice, getting a little less pulp. That's a good trend. Let's see if the Angel can continue that. A couple of things I've noticed about this Angel juicer. One is that it's very cool to look in there and see those gears spinning. It looks like some factory. It's kind of cool. Another, not so cool, is whereas these guys have these big guards up here, kind of splash guards or trays. This doesn't, so I'm constantly picking leaves out of my juice. They're falling down in there. Speed-wise, it's probably about the same as the other slow juicers. Kind of, when you're doing greens, it adds a new meaning to the word slow juicer. But that's okay. Greens aren't supposed to be quick. I'd say the trend looks like it is continuing. Seems like more juice came out of the Angel than out of any of the others. Again, this one's a little harder to read the scale. Maybe 700? We'll see once I pour it in here. Chunky. Wow. I think those might be some leaves that fell in. I picked out a lot. So it's sort of a salad in a glass. How does it look compared to the other? Yeah. Yeah, there's more. And I suspect there's a lot less pulp as well. It all fit in this little container. Just got to weigh it and see how much it is. So the question is, will this trend continue? It looks like there was more juice, but will there be less pulp? I had 358 grams there, and I have 357 by 1 gram. So did slightly better. Let me put these all out as I did before so we can take a look, compare these. Not much difference in the pulp, as you notice, until you get here, and then we have our bowl of salad. Again, centrifugals aren't really designed for greens. They're not recommended for greens. It's still got some juice out of there. Not too bad, and surprisingly, notice it's the one time the centrifugal didn't have any foam. This one has more foam and pulp. Quality-wise, hard to say. I don't tend to drink greens juice directly. I like to mix it with other things. Clearly, you can see the Angel had the highest yield. But again, if I look at my chart, the biggest takeaway I guess I have here, besides the fact that the centrifugal just makes salad, is that the slow juicers do take their time on greens. This guy took about 3.5 minutes. Everything else, 7 minutes plus, 6:59 for this one. Over 10 minutes for the Angel. So if you're in a hurry, greens aren't your thing. Do like I do, mix it in with some carrots, things like that. So I have a chart here. This has some concrete data about how much juice we got, how much pulp was left over, and how much time it took for everything. This chart we will post at the end of the video. So if you want to see the raw data, stick around and you can see that. Some general observations I see from that is, in terms of speed, it's almost in this order. Generally speaking, the Angel was the slowest. For sure, Centrifugal was the fastest. The opposite is true for yield. Generally speaking, the Angel had the highest yield and the Centrifugal had the lowest yield. But how about overall? What do you think? What do I think about these machines? Well, Centrifugal, that might be good if you're looking for something fast and you don't want to invest a lot of money into a higher end machine. That could be the way to go, at least a way to get your feet wet in juicing. And also if you're just doing some simple things, a lot of carrots, maybe oranges, things like that. If you're stepping up to these slow juicing machines, what are the differences? I'm a little biased, obviously, because I own one of these and I really like it. But how would I rank them? It depends what you want to do. Just like with anything. Our question at the beginning of the video, which juicer is best? What do you want to do? Do you want the highest juice yield? Then you want an Angel. Do you want maybe the easiest machine to use? Probably the vertical. Do you want the most versatile machine, something that can do a lot and does everything pretty well? You want the horizontal. This has the benefit of doing things like nut butters and pastas, salsas, things like that. So they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and it's really up to you. But if you want to know more about one of these machines, take a look at one of our links here, and we've reviewed some of these machines already. You can get more information about them. Besides that, stick around for our chart, and that pretty well wraps up this long video. Thanks for sticking around. One thing I want to mention before I finish, cleaning. Almost forgot. How hard are these things to clean? I would rank them 1, easiest, 2nd easiest, tie for 3rd. These both have different things that make them a little more difficult to clean. This one's maybe a little harder to disassemble, get those twin augers out. This just has a big screen to clean. This guy's pretty easy. It has these cleaning brushes. This one is super easy, just a few parts, rinse most of them, and a tiny little juice screen to scrub with a toothbrush. And that should wrap it up. So again, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like more information, come to our website. That's www.EUJUICERS.com. See you next time.